Hello.
Yes. And welcome to another episode of DevBeardOps, where it's the beard on the inside that counts. So what we do in this weekly episode is that Darko and myself talk about everything DevOps, automation, cloud, AWS, those kind of things. We basically have a passion for all of that. And today we have got a very fun episode planned. This was like literally one where, as if you saw my tweet, like the dog chasing his tail, that was literally me because I'm a huge Terraform fan. I've been using it for years. And as you guessed it, today we are talking everything Terraform. And we have got Kerim joining us from HashiCorp. He's a developer advocate there. So Kerim, why don't you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you. Hi, folks. My name is Kerim Satirli. I'm a developer advocate at HashiCorp, where I focus on the infrastructure line of products, which in my case is Terraform, Packer, sometimes Vagrant, if you need to test stuff locally and you want to try your own cloud and heat up the room. Yeah. Excited to be here. It is the beard on the inside that counts. I took a shower this morning. I was like, Wednesday, should probably get a shave.
No.
Yep. Too late.
Too late. I know.
Awesome.
Like when you mentioned Vagrant, I'm a fan of Vagrant. I remember, was it like 7 years ago? I started like doing things with Ansible, and the book I read back then was using Vagrant extensively, and I was like, this is amazing. I love the thing. So even though I live and work in the cloud, I like doing sometimes things locally to just heat up the room, as you said.
I mean, sometimes it makes sense, right? Like you don't always have the time to wait for your instance to come up, even if it takes 2 minutes.
Yeah,
there's stuff you want to figure out and verify locally, and at that point it makes sense to just have it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, also the local dev experience, because where we used Vagrant was like we literally had like project folders with the Vagrant config file shipped with it, so that everybody devs locally inside a VM. It's the same experience for everyone, and it's like you got into the habit of saying Vagrant up, and then boom, you've got your dev VM going, and you don't have to worry about what I need to install for this one, and do I have Python conflicts in terms of the version that's currently set, or even better yet, Java version issues.
Yeah, that very much sounds familiar.
We have a comment. We have a comment here from EA Nerdy. That shirt, LOL. EA Nerdy, you have to be a bit more specific when you're defining on which shirt. Is it Kareem's shirt? Is it Kobus's shirt? Or is it my shirt?
This is my official Terraform shirt, by the way. For those of you that get it.
Yeah. So it's we have swag apparently. So yeah.
And if we want to continue with the nerdy jokes, we also have Swagger for our APIs.
Swagger for
nice.
APIs. Wow.
I think you need to give that one a rest.
Cut deep, Kobus.
Oof. Okay, so we're talking about Terraform today. Let's kick it off with what is Terraform? Other than in the alien world of changing planets.
So this is a fun one, right? I had a talk with a friend of mine who, after years of being a traditional sysadmin, discovered Terraform. We were colleagues for years, and I was like, you need to give Terraform a try. And he just didn't go for it. Like, no, I'm used to doing it this way, and eventually tried it. And the most beautiful way he summarized it was Terraform is job security. I'm like, that makes sense, because now your job starts making fun again. And why? Because you're codifying stuff rather than clicking stuff.
Yeah.
Now in your brain you might go like, how does that make sense, right? Like you can go into the AWS console, pick an EC2 instance, pick an AMI, you get a beautiful wizard to go through everything. It takes maybe 30 seconds. Makes a ton of sense. If you're deploying, like a WordPress WordPress setup with a DB, maybe you should even use Lightsail for that, because then it's like 2 clicks less.
Yep.
Save yourself the time. But then the question is, your next client also wants the same exact setup. How do you go about that? And then it turns out that you're pretty good at making WordPress sites, and all of a sudden you have to host 100 of them. How do you go about that? Do you isolate them? Because that's easier for the client. Maybe some of them want to upload a ton of videos to their cat picture blogs. I mean, we're all doing important stuff here, and we need to get that word out. So at that point, codification makes a ton of sense. because with 15 lines of code, you can have a ton of EC2 instances going, all spun up from those same lines of code. And to me, that just makes more sense than going in and clicking things manually. I don't know about you two. I'm a lazy person.
So no, I mean, I'm a huge fan. My journey back with infrastructure and code started with actual bash scripts with the AWS commands in them. And
Yes.
then from there, then we switched to CloudFormation. And just to date this quickly, this was back in the day where there was a 51K limit on the JSON input, and there was only JSON available. So it was interesting times. So then after a while, I broke that because the JSON, the single template became too complex, and then I moved over to Ansible. Had a lot of fun with that until once again I built this massive thing, and I ran into the lovely Python thing called undefined variables. And sorry, it's one of those you watch the Ansible run, and you see this little bit of I remember it's pink or magenta color just fly by, and you just had that sinking feeling okay, something's going to break now, because guess what? It keeps on running. And it just ran things, and it just broke it. And I just got to a point where, this isn't working for me. I didn't understand Ansible well enough, and then discovered Terraform and was it's got this plan command. I'm wait, hold on. It validates and checks and tells me what it's going to do. And it's okay, I'm sold, done, in. And I mean, yeah, from there was just Terraform all the way.
It enables different workflows. And I think that's, to me, what it is really about. I don't care which infrastructure as code tool you use, as long as you use one, because frankly, there's no way you can work with other people or trust your former and past and future self that you're doing the exact same thing today that you did yesterday without codifying it. And Monkey, yes, FMT or FUMT, depending on which camp you're in, is a Terraform command. It's the best one and the one to start with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And no, not just to start with. It's the one that you actually put inside the build pipeline that does a git commit back into the repository. Because I've had so many formatting wars with people oh, do we use tabs or spaces, indenting, whatever. It's just this tool provides an opinionated one. It's in the build pipeline. You're welcome to customize. You get to do whatever you want. But when it hits the repository, it will be in this format.
Exactly. Code quality is a huge thing, especially if you're defining your infrastructure as code. And, I come from a front-end, profession initially, not just jQuery, actually doing more interesting stuff than that. And every time you join a new group, everyone has their own JS lint standards. And it's
oh yeah,
all right, let's relearn everything we know. Terraform takes that away. Terraform decides that this is how it's going to be, and that's easy.
And it's actually surprising. People don't realize the impact that has on someone joining a new company. It's literally you spend 5-10% of your brain cycles just, I need to do this. It doesn't read well. What is it doing? Instead of going, the code is this.
Correct. And sometimes, I come from a very traditional system administrator background. I racked, stacked, installed operating systems, and you join a company, you join a project, you join a thing you do, and there's always a way we do things. And you need to configure a server to do that, and to do this and do that, and you never know how to do it. There may be an explanation, there may be some documentation, there may even be a playbook, but
or bash history.
Or bash history. But usually it's just install this piece of software and just you hope it's the same way as it did last time. So when you switch to code, and I'm a big fan of infrastructure as code, is there's a standard way to do it. You don't have to think about it too much. You have this wonderful piece of code that you can just read and repeat and change and modify, but it is very visible to what you do.
No, it is one of those things. I mean, it's as soon as if you run it at any not even large scale, if you run it just for a little bit and you've seen the impact it can have, it's it's massive. It's you do not want to go back. I've never met a single person that, unless there was a very convoluted process around using it, that ever wanted to go back to do things.
Yeah. And just a comment here, we have a comment from JavaSoft, off topic completely, but Kerim didn't get a memo regarding the dress code. Yeah, We'll told him the beer doesn't matter, but yeah, we forgot to tell him about the proper shirt sizes. So for next time, we'll make sure that that we ship a shirt to Kerim.
Oh yeah, but I mean, Darko, actually, it's the phone on the background that counts, not necessarily on the shirt.
Oh, okay,
so
okay, so yeah, okay, so he has a floral pattern on his walls, so that's okay. Yeah, it's like a young ZZ Top.
I like that.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
I have to screenshot that one.
Yeah.
That's too good.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
I love. But unlike ZZ Top, we talk about the infrastructure as code. I'm not sure if they ever talked about the infrastructure as code, but
Well,
we
could be
get
fun.
to
I
do that
mean,
right now.
but yeah. But getting back to Terraform. So basically, Terraform helps you manage your infrastructure as code, and also your infrastructure and just codifies all of that. But it's not just a case of, okay, let's open up a couple of text files and define some infrastructure, and we go from there, and that's it. Terraform has got a lot of other parts to it that I wanted to dig into a little bit today, like modules, the registry, Terraform Cloud. There's even like public registry of modules, so you can do your own private registry, all of those things. Because once you get past the initial, let me just do a couple of short resources, you tend to go into this thing, well, multiple teams are spinning up roughly the same infrastructure. How do we go about, simplifying it and making it easier for them to do that? And also then the question that always comes in as soon as you bring in a pattern is like, how do I go about updating that pattern?
And is my pattern the right one versus the one that my team has been doing? And obviously, like if you're mid-career, your pattern is always the right one, right?
Yeah,
of course.
And then you get a little bit more senior, and then you realize that actually, maybe there's other options. It's so there's a lot of workflows that you can do with codified infrastructure, and my personal favorite is really collaboration. It's code, it's text files, which means that you can commit them, which means you can do pull requests,
right?
Which means, I don't know about you two, I don't internalize the well-architected framework. I have to look stuff up, but I have colleagues that know it way better than I do. So at that point, I can say, hey, this is my Terraform code. This is how I set up my VPC. Does this site arrange look good? Been using AWS since 2008. I want to say site arranges and making sure they make sense still always requires some thinking.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's one of those things where it makes sense to bring somebody in who does that and enjoys that. I think that's the most important part. And then we go from there.
The site arranges are an important one because it's one of those, like I also went through that rough learning of initially just using the default one in multiple accounts, multiple VPCs. And then after a while, you hit that point where, okay, now we want to start not even pairing VPCs, just knowing what is running where in some easy way. Let's say by looking at the IP, and then you realize like, I've got no clue. Yeah. And then from there, you progress to okay, let's make everything different. And then once again, a couple of mistakes later, you realize like, okay, let's make it different, but we leave gaps in the big ranges between the different environments, because inevitably you think you've got, let's say 3, dev, testing, and production. Let's make them sequential. And we're happy now. And then someone comes, we need a UAT one, or we need a special one for this customer to test with. And so I just went and said, well, you know what, big gaps, and we can figure out how to fill those gaps later.
Exactly. It's so much nicer, and it takes a while to get to that point, right? Yeah. When you spin up, like you said, like 2 or 3 instances and maybe a database, you're not going to run into problems. It becomes a problem at scale. And at that point, not having to think about every VPC separately is where things get really interesting. So one thing I love about Terraform for that is that you have functions that you can use specifically for CIDR. And I'll see if we can get a link for that up in the chat. But with those functions, you can do calculations for your network without having to, go to the RFC and dig through everything. Saves a ton of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, in the early days, there weren't as many of these convenience functions with Terraform. I know you started even earlier. I started with 0.6 version. I know that with 12 there came, or 0.12 there came a whole bunch of new functions and things. So there was just like plain text or string variable, and do it in there and do some very funky string manipulations to change things.
It's honestly the functions, the whole collection of functions is just one of those things that doesn't get a lot of love. Like, for example, Terraform console, and it just makes stuff so much more powerful.
Yeah.
And I know I sound like a shill saying this, but honestly, like, I use Terraform to generate template files that I then put into Ansible, just because it's so convenient for me. And I love plugging things together. Terraform has a concept of providers, which essentially Terraform is an API client that exposes a language called HCL. It adds a couple of functions that make it a superset of the traditional HCL you'll find in our other tools. And you can do amazing stuff with that. For example, if you use Vault, our secrets management solution, you can get your AWS credentials through Vault, pull them into Terraform, output some of the data into a template file. For example, like the profile name, or if you're doing cross-origin, stuff that you need on your instance because you can do an IAM instance profile, sorry. There is so much that you can just do dynamically without ever hard coding it, that life gets a lot easier. Like I said, I'm lazy. I like stuff that works.
Yeah, we all are, and that's good, right? So ultimately, you want to make sure that you do not spend time on unnecessary tasks, unnecessary things you want to do. I mean, because ultimately they don't bring value unless you really enjoy them and they bring value to you. But yeah, and there's a question here from Pecky asking about what if they don't want to use Vault? Is there a way to do it with that?
If you don't want to use Vault, plenty of other options. The KMS service is pretty well supported.
Yeah.
So Terraform has a concept of providers. Let's talk about the AWS provider for a second. Couple cool things. First of all, the team, super nice people. I have to give them a shout out. I've been working with them for a long time, and they are nice people to work with.
Yeah.
They also output really cool stuff every week. Like, you get a new version of the Terraform AWS provider every Thursday.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. You don't need to update every week, but it's just nice knowing that, hey, like, next week there's a new resource. Good stuff. In there, KMS is one of the super well supported services. So if you already have your secrets in KMS, bring them into Terraform where it makes sense.
Right.
The management of them, not the actual secrets, and manage it from the convenience of your editor.
Yeah.
No, I actually had a workflow at one point where I did bring the secrets into the actual repo, but what we did is we had two different KMS keys. The first one was for encrypting the secrets. So you run a command line helper script to say, listen, please encrypt this for me for production. And the developers only had encryption rights. They didn't have decryption rights. And then they would take that encrypted string, put it in Terraform. Terraform then has got decryption rights and then uses a second key to encrypt it again when it puts it into parameter store. And it led us to a very fun situation where one of the developers, after we rolled this out, like 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, came in a mad panic saying, listen, I need that production database password. I'm like, why? Oh, by the way, part of our deployment process is SSH to the box, Ruby rake, run SQL migration script to do data modifications. I'm like, oh, whoa, hold on a sec. We did not discuss this when we said, what's the workflow that you need? It's like, no, big no.
I actually yesterday on this exact place, twitch.tv/AWS, we had a show called AWS Community Voices, and we had Paul Zitzman from South Africa joining us, and he built this wonderful tool with Terraform called ClickOps Watcher. Basically, it's a tool that deploys into your AWS accounts and detects if somebody clicked to do something. And it's wonderful because they all want to do everything through Terraform, everything through infrastructure as code. And if you notice somebody doing something that's through clicking, somebody gets pinged on Slack. And basically they get a message, oh, person X has done this via the console. And it's not just to push blame. It's not to say, hey, you did that, don't do that. No, it's more of a like, so why did you do that? Do we not have the proper code in place? How can we improve the things we're doing? So I find it wonderful. You basically let all those things and just kind of convert them to code, which is just wonderful there as well.
I love that tool, and I think you should definitely get a link up here.
I will.
Just for my own benefit, because that is a workflow that makes sense, right? It's not the engineer who failed to do that. To me, it's an institutional failure. If it's easier to click in a console than to do it through code, if your organization uses code, beautiful, then you're not using the right modules. You're not building the right modules. And that makes it hard. So we touched on modules a little bit earlier, and I think that's one of the patterns that I really like. You start building your infrastructure, and everyone starts with the launch instance button. We'll keep it EC2 focused today. Like 15 years. I mean, we got to celebrate. Right? It just makes sense. And you're like, hey, I want to launch the Linux 2 AMI, or maybe an Ubuntu one, whatever works for you. And it's like, okay, so we need to set firewall rules. We need to attach a VPC, or actually deploy it in a VPC. We need probably SSH keys, maybe some SSM config. All those things, you can write that down in a runbook, and you'll probably mess something up, because it is always going to go wrong when you can't have it. So that's where you start building a module. And at that point, build some smarts in and make your module do the least amount as possible. Because if your module does everything the resource supports, it's not a module. You're just copy-pasting the resource from left to right.
Yeah. No, I've actually seen some of those. I've seen some of those initial modules, because initially what you think is like, okay, let's make it as configurable as possible. And then you get to that point after a while, we realize like often the developer teams aren't interested in the minute decisions and trade-offs that you made. They just want to say, well, give me a quickly can I launch this type thing?
Exactly.
Like, what's the container name? What's the service name? How much memory and CPU do I need? And then done.
I just want to pause here right now, if possible. So just to welcome all the new folks joining the stream. No. Okay, I won't pause. So just to welcome all the new folks joining the stream. We have a bunch of people right now. So welcome to DevBeardOps. This is a weekly show where this gentleman and myself talk about automation, DevOps, the cloud, and everything in between and beyond. And today we have Kerim here from HashiCorp, and he gets to talk to us about Cobus's favorite pastime, Terraform. Please do let us know.
Sorry, Kerim. We still have Kerim here somewhere. He's coming back. Don't worry.
Okay,
he just had an audio issue that involves him resetting something because of the browser. It's one of those side effects. It's here we go. He is back. Let me get him. He is back. He did not run away.
Beautiful when this happens, right? Like
we thought like we lost you. That's it. We mentioned Cobus and Terraform. And just like, you know what?
I just ran out of Terraform Destroy on my live stream.
So and people in the chat, please make sure you ask us questions. Let us know all of your Terraform questions or anything else, right? So and good morning. And we also have a couple of fine folks here. Pecky is back from all the other streams, so thank you very much for coming back as well. We have somebody joining us from Dallas, Texas. Good morning and coffee time to you as well.
Yeah, good early morning.
Good early morning. We have Anton Babenko here, who is very deeply interested in Terraform. If you have never watched Anton's streams and Anton's videos on Terraform building modules, you should definitely do that.
It is good to see you, Anton.
Yeah, I must say it's one of those things like over the years of using Terraform, when modules became a thing and these community contributed modules start popping up, I just saw his name everywhere. And by now, what it basically boils down to, if I search for a module and it's not authored by him, I'm like, okay, cool. Doesn't he maybe have one somewhere that I can rather use? Just because the level of his stuff is incredible.
Right. Yep. I have a question here. I want to kind of answer. This might not be definitely related to Terraform, but it's a more of a general best practice of coming from Pecky. When managing secrets, are the secrets in a plain text in a state file? How does that work if you're managing secrets straight from Terraform?
So it depends on how. This is IT, right? So pretty much every answer is like it depends. It depends on how you do it. Right. I personally like to set up my secrets to be pulled from Vault. and then I have one environment variable that gets my stuff authenticated with Vault, and then pulls that in. I don't output my secrets, which limits this problem. But there's definitely ways that, for example, if you do an IAM access key, you can have that output to a file. And if you don't protect that file, then you're leaking it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, I've actually done that before when I was too lazy. Actually, use it for because I manage all my DNS and a couple other things with Terraform still. And I needed an API key to set that up. I'm like, I'm too lazy to go create one by hand. Let me add it quickly, set it as an output, ran the apply once, deleted it again, and then, deleted the output portion at least. And then, so there are some convenience things there. I mean, home security is not that important, right?
Yeah, exactly. Why would you protect your home?
And depends on where you live.
Yeah, fair. Also, I want to add just a couple of more questions here as well. So we had, I think we had two folks asking us about a similar kind of a thing. We have Monkey asking about Terraform versus CDK, and then we have Adrian asking us what is the strength and weaknesses of using CloudFormation versus CDK versus Terraform on AWS, right?
Yeah, that is a meaty discussion.
Yeah,
that is a meaty discussion indeed.
Yeah.
Docker has the best answer yet that we always use for when somebody asks us, should I use Terraform or CDK or CloudFormation? Docker?
Yes, you should. Right? It, we come from AWS. Exactly. We come from AWS, and our product is CloudFormation. Our product is CDK. Our product is SAM. But it doesn't matter. As long as you're using the one that fits your use case, right? If you're using Terraform, maybe you're managing something beyond AWS. Maybe you're managing, I don't even know what Terraform can manage, but there's multiple providers. And I'm not even talking multi-cloud here. I'm talking managing firewalls. Cisco switches, firewalls, right? Yeah. Those things. If you are doing that and Terraform fits your needs, that you can have a central thing, amazing, right? If you are a god among men in Python, you may want to use CDK because you can use your powers with Python to do stuff in Python and those things. If you want to define every specific element by using a native service such as CloudFormation, you can absolutely do that. So people say is like the best programming language is the one you know. And that still comes down to this. It doesn't matter. I think all of these products are just amazing, right? Each of them has their own little good things and bad things, and we can try to map those things out, but ultimately it is just don't do it from the console. That's the whole thing. And we're not trying to gatekeep like, people who do it from the console are doing it bad, but ultimately in a production environment and even development environment and even staging environments, you should do it all through infrastructure as code because it's easier. Trust me, it's easier. You may think it's more complex, but it's doing stuff through IAC, infrastructure as code, is paying your technical debt.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, the only thing I would add here is if you're starting out from scratch today, you have not done AWS or cloud or infrastructure as code before, I would, if I have to put CloudFormation versus CDK next to each other, go CDK first because there's a lot of abstraction on top of the base constructs. Like you can spin up an entire load balanced ECS cluster, I think, in 2 lines of code. With you say new load balanced ECS cluster Fargate. I can't remember exactly what it is, and it does all of that for you. Where with CloudFormation, you have to manage all the primitives. But then what you do is CDK generates CloudFormation templates.
Yes.
Dig into those, go see what it generates, what it does.
Correct.
And then the second bit that I always recommend to people is saying, like, play with at least 2 different infrastructure as code tools to get a feel for them. Because, for example, for me, I love Terraform. It just completely made sense in the way I approach things and my thought process. For Docker, for example, he loves CDK again. It's like different people like different things. Just use one of them.
Yeah, exactly. And, if you want to combine things, your serverless application model, SAM, there's actually a tweet going on from Kerim here. Basically, you can try to support and help get Terraform support within SAM. So make sure to check out this tweet that I just pasted in the chat. So this thing right here, if you wish to have Terraform within your serverless application model. So, and why not, right? You can do Terraform from CDK. CDK-TF is a thing, right? So you can generate your Terraform files from CDK. So we went full circle. I'm just looking for a way to generate your Terraform through CloudFormation, but you generate that CloudFormation through CDK.
At the end, it's just bash scripts, right?
And at the end, it's just a bunch of bash scripts. Yeah. So,
Darko, remember, you still have job security. You don't have to make it so difficult that for anyone else to take over to keep your job. Okay.
Okay. Fair point.
I love this.
Look, Kerim, you've also been in the industry for a while. I'm sure you've seen some wild things out there.
Definitely. It's the polarization is one that comes up. We've been doing this with editors since forever, and we all know that ED is the one true editor. But oh, there we go. See,
at least he didn't say Emacs. I'm fine.
But Darko, how do you feel about VI with evil mode? Or is it Spacemax or?
No, it's a VI with evil mode. Yeah. I haven't tried Spacemax, to be honest, but sidestep. I've tried Emacs. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just enjoying the meme. So, but Vim is the best. Or Ed. I mean, you can use Ed.
Or Nano. There we go. This is beautiful.
We lost Cobus. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. We just lost Cobus there.
Technical trouble. It happens, right? It's one of those.
Internet connections. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. We got our versus thing out of there. So.
I mean, at the end of the day, use what you're comfortable with, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I like photography in my spare time. I have nice kit, and I'll tell you, most of my pictures I take with my phone because that's the one I have with me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Use what works.
Definitely, and we like to joke, and I think it's more of a thing, but it's definitely the best text editor is again the one you have. Yeah, exactly. No, don't come at me. But so again, a very big tangent here. The first time I used Vim, I was like, this is ridiculous. What idiot made this? Who would use Vim in their life? Ta-da. I just got so used to it now. I have everything. If everything in my life can be a Vim key setup, I would do it. My browsers have Vim keys, my everything. So it's just you start drinking the Kool-Aid, and so there you go.
Here's an interesting question that I want to touch on because I've been this close to actually misusing Terraform very recently. So at its heart, what Terraform is a let me get this right quickly. It might be a directed graph that uses the dependencies and also then does the change calculation between what you want, what the current state is, and what it sees out there. And then, current state being in the state file. And so it's able to do this kind of diff thing. So we've got an internal tool where we log our activities where, let's say I'm speaking like this stream today, I would go log it somewhere, add some metrics to it so we can actually dig into which topics people are interested in, where we've been speaking, all of that. And it's got a web interface and it's a whole bunch of manual fields. And I've been really annoyed with that, working with it. And also we don't have as much validation as we want. So I was actually looking into how hard would it be to write a Terraform provider for that. So I can just have my local HTML file with all of my things and then sync that up and keep that in check for me, basically, so I don't have to use the web interface.
As long as there's an API, you can definitely use Terraform for that. Terraform started out as an infrastructure as code tool, and if I'm not entirely mistaken, AWS instance was the first resource we had. It was definitely one of the AWS ones. But I mean, people build all kinds of stuff with it. Former colleague of mine built a Unify provider, which I use. So I use Terraform Cloud with a local runner. And essentially the local runner then kicks off changes to my local Unify network. Is it overkill? I'm sure it is, but it's not misuse because it helps me make my network more sensible. It brings us back to that CIDR question from earlier. I really am not good at calculating those things, and using Terraform, much easier. The worst misuse, though, is definitely the Domino's pizza provider that does not work outside the US. That kind of region gatekeeping is not okay, and it is absolutely against the terms of service. Yeah, I
Nice.
said it.
Yeah. No, I was actually looking to that Unify provider. I read about it somewhere a few months back and then promptly forgot about it because I've also got Unify gear at home that I actually want to start managing with that then. Because obviously it's clearly not in a good state at the moment. I have to go fix it.
It is a beautiful way of making sure your Unify setup does what you expect it to do. My pro tip is make sure whichever runner you use to kick off updates to the Unify API has a network connection. Because if you fiddle with the Wi-Fi and the radio gets restarted, then well,
Yeah, I've learned that the hard way once as well. I was literally sitting there and it took me like a full 2-3 minutes looking at it on my laptop or my phone. I can't remember what I was using, and I'm sitting there like, I just said reset this device. Why is it not coming back up? And it's like, there's only one access point. You were connected to it. I could see it flashing for config in the corner. Yeah.
yeah. We've all been there.
Oh yeah.
Terraform right now has, I want to say 1,500 providers. It keeps changing so quickly that it's hard to keep track of. So I'm just going to look it up. 1,344 right now.
Oof. Yeah.
That means you have, even with duplicates removed, you still have probably 800 different services you can support. So, maybe you have
800. Wow.
Yeah.
And also, just quickly for folks to put this into context, sorry. AWS is one provider.
Yes.
There are, like said, so many hundreds of these. So, like I've seen before, like even I know a friend of mine is busy looking at managing physical switches and firewalls. I think it's Juniper firewalls.
Yeah.
Juniper, sorry, and Jupyter notebooks. I always get the two confused. And he's actually looking into how to start managing them because doing all of that by hand is just insane. It's
what packages say, use Microtic instead of Ubiquity. Totally cool. There is a Terraform provider for that. It feels like those smartphone commercials from a couple of years ago where, like there's an app for that.
Oh, yeah. No, it is. I mean, it's like, it's, if you can use it, I would highly recommend using it. It's like, it just makes your life so much easier. But speaking of, we touched a little bit on modules earlier. And once you get into the whole module world, you're going to start hitting that fun situation where you've been using a module, either one off the shelf or one that you created yourself for a while. And then inevitably, you have to make a change to it. You have to update it. And you have to, guess what? Roll that update change out to multiple different service teams. And the way I used to do it was I started off this whole module career with there's a mono repo with everything infrastructure related in it, and the modules are just folders inside there. So then it was easy. It was a direct file reference, and guess what? YOLO, next time you ran Terraform, you got an update. Surprise! That only works so far until you start breaking things or having unexpected changes. So, Kerim, what's a better way of doing that with the modern tools of Terraform?
So, personally, I'm not a fan of mono repos. I like to keep stuff separate, but that's mostly because Git repositories are cheap. I use the GitHub provider to manage my repositories, unsurprisingly. So going to the UI and clicking through things actually takes me longer than just copy pasting my module. So when you have your stuff in a repository, or even better on a Terraform registry, if it's something you can share with the community, put a new version tag in there and update your your consuming Terraform project as it works out for you. If your module, let's say you use the code build module that the AWS IA team built, and you're at version 001 and you're upgrading to 002, just random numbers. If nothing changed in the naming of the resources, that upgrade is super quick. Terraform init -upgrade, Terraform get, Terraform apply. If you want to believe the YOLO approach, Terraform apply auto approve.
Of course.
And you're good.
Yeah.
If resources got renamed, then that should be reflected in the changelog because it's kind to your consumers to do that. Ooh. If you don't do that, you'll get feedback on that. I speak from experience here. At that point, you might need to do a Terraform state move, and we have documentation for that. It's a little bit more involved, but it's not impossible. As with everything you deploy, test your changes, roll them out gradually. Don't do 100% of your infrastructure right away.
Kerim, I'm gonna ask you something in a second regarding, especially mentioning testing. But before we do that, I wanna reach out to the audience. Hi, chat. Are you listening to us? Are you watching me right now? For the first time ever, we actually ask you this. We've made a survey. Wow. Because we want to know how we do, right? We want you to tell us, are you enjoying this show, right? Is this show something that you like coming to every Wednesday? Is it something that you find useful? And tell us how we can do better. I've posted the link in chat now, and it's right now on the screen. So just go there. It's gonna take a minute, less than a minute, while I ask the question. So make sure you go there and just give us your honest answer. So no credits this time. So we promised at one point we can give you credits, but no credits this time. This is just, we want your honest feedback from exactly DevBeardOps. There you go. The best feedback we have here, right? So yeah, we're gonna try to do these surveys every show. So just we see that, is this a good show? Is this something you're enjoying? And please also let us know what we can do better. So the survey is down there. It's in the chat. So thank you very, very, very much. Now, my question for you, Kerim, if I may.
Hit me.
When it comes to testing Terraform, and I've actually ran into this wall way back, is that I know how to test my CloudFormation code, run unit tests. I know how to test if it's going to be producing what I want it to produce. I know how to test my CDK. Is there a way you can test Terraform before it runs? So, for example, create a simple unit test that sets expectations that this Terraform template will produce X, Y, or Z, and I can run it before actually hitting apply.
So the short answer is yes.
Okay.
The longer answer is you should actually start by thinking about this in terms of layers. You know, like how when we built critical infrastructure, we built defense in depth. Testing should also be in depth. Start out with the format command, because that ensures that your code is properly aligned.
Okay.
Seems small, but do it. Next one, validate. That just makes sure that Terraform checks your code is actually using syntax that's supported by the provider, but it doesn't call the remote API.
Okay.
Then you might be deploying an EC2 instance, and maybe you specified the T34.micro, which we all know doesn't exist. You just, made a little typo there. Happens.
Yeah.
Use something like tflint, which will tell you, hey, even before running against a remote API, this thing does not exist.
Right.
So you get a little bit more feedback. And then you can go into the Terraform test command, which is currently an experiment. So it's not the full solution that we want to work towards to.
Okay.
Feedback is welcome. But if you use it on the CLI, definitely a good way. We've got a couple of community projects like TerraTest. What else am I missing? If you are in the Ruby space, Kitchen Terraform could work.
Yes. Yeah.
Inspec, yeah.
There's, exactly. Inspec, OPA, you can get in there. There's a ton of different tools. And just with, the question like, which one should I use? Which one is the right one to use? Multiple. Maybe you want to use Gauss to validate things because you have a way of doing that.
Right.
At the end of the day, whatever your team feels comfortable with is the right tool to use.
Okay. Yeah, good.
No, it's definitely. I mean, the challenge here is like, unlike, let's say, well, you have this with code as well. There's certain things that you can potentially mock. So let's say you've got an integration with a third-party API. You can create your own mock for that, or maybe that company ships you a mock library for it to actually test it. But at the end of the day, certain things can only be tested by calling it live. So, for example, creating AWS infrastructure, there are projects out there that mock things out, but it's not going to give you the exact same, does this work or not? So if you build something in your pipeline where there's another account purely used for provisioning infrastructure, making sure that everything works the way it's supposed to, do that. It's spin it up, run your test, tear it down, it's in terms of cost. I mean, because things are built in seconds nowadays, and sometimes even in millisecond increments, the cost factor for that is usually not that high.
Exactly.
Okay, so I think we would like to see some. You started screen sharing, Kerim. We would like to get that.
No, that was me.
Oh, you okay? So
yes.
Oh, that was you. Okay, so Kerim,
yes.
Can you show? Or who's going to show us something?
I'm going to show something, and Darko, the disappointment in your voice when you figured out it was Kerim or was me and not Kerim was very, very tangible. We're going to have a conversation about that afterwards.
I'm sorry. But yeah, this is great because the feedback is coming in. Thank you all for submitting your feedback. And one of the pieces of feedback we get is people would like to see more hands-on, more code, more demos.
Okay.
So absolutely, yeah, we like to hear that, and we like to make sure that this is what you get what you want. So
hands-on code is always the best, right?
Exactly.
Cool.
Kobus, put your hands on the code.
Yes. This is we touched on this earlier when Kerim mentioned the changelog and making sure that when you move from one version of a provider to a new version. And this is something that the first time I saw this in the Terraform repo. So you can see literally this is just GitHub, HashiCorp, Terraform. This is literally the open source Terraform repo. In there, they have this magic file called changelog.md that they also update with every single release. And this thing was worth gold in the early days because at that point Terraform was still new. There were some bugs, there were some new services added, because as you can imagine, when it started going out, they did not support every single service out there on AWS. They only did some of them. So I would watch this file and actually see what's going on. And the reason I like this is that firstly, you can see the different versions and it tells you in a breakdown what it does. Firstly, it has bug fixes, new features, and this part is super important. Upgrade notes, like if you did this and that, go look at it. Enhancements. So what I would do at that point is, because we were using some of the latest AWS resources, I would literally every single release before we move to that version, would go through and say, listen, let's see what's changed, what fixed. And it's just like every single repo should actually have this. It's just so great.
It saves so much time because, if you're working on a feature for Terraform, and if I could get you to scroll up and select the 1.0 tag, that would be even nicer. Because we're looking at 0.15, which is a little older.
Yeah.
Still totally fine to use, but let's be honest, 1.0 is
Kobus, can you zoom it a bit? Can you just make it a bit bigger, the font? Good.
Everyone who contributes, make sure that as part of their PR, their pull request, they put in a description of what you can expect. Seems simple, but it is so useful, and especially with the AWS provider, when you follow that changelog, it's beautiful to see that, like you were hoping for workspaces to finally get supported, and it's in there. And that means, hey, you know what? Now I can have maybe a little less CloudFormation and a little more Terraform for that specific use case. And, just upgrade the provider version and you're good.
Yep. Yeah, wonderful. I like the verbosity of the releases here. You can see all of the stuff here. So,
also, I feel seen with the versioning, given that I upgraded my home project to 0.13 about 2 weeks back only, because I was playing with different Terraform versions. So I think I've yet to run a version 1 Terraform command.
The upgrade experience, I'll be honest, from 0.11, 12, 13, it was earlier days, and the upgrade path was a little bit rougher. Right. 14, 15, 1, those are much nicer. There's no switch from HCL1 to HCL2, which means you need to re-architect some of your code. It gets a lot better. Yep. So I'm one of those people with, not 100, but like a couple dozen Terraform projects, and it was like, oh wait, you're still on 0.11? That is embarrassing. I should change that. And it's like, boy, HCL1 was different.
Yeah, I remember when the switchover happened, and I think when HCL2 came along, or at least I'm not sure if it was HCL2, but there was a big syntax change in the language.
Yeah,
that's when it happened. So I have a couple of videos on my YouTube channel where I learned Terraform, and I was trying to build simple things, and I was going through the documentation, but I was also looking at examples outside of the documentation, and they were different, and I was like not sure which is the correct way to do it, like. So yeah, it is important that you use I use HCL2 right now. Yeah. That just makes sense. Yeah.
Especially because if right now you're using HCL2, and let's say you're using Packer,
right,
your brain does no longer need to switch, because Packer also switched from JSON to HCL2. And because the tools are so closely related to one another, you get to use a lot of the same functions.
Right.
Like less context switching makes my day better. And I'm pretty sure that's the same for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, definitely. And I mean, even though there were big changes, this is one of the other things that I really love about HashiCorp's approach to the software. It's like Terraform was pre-release, pre-version 1 for a very long time. We're talking years. And that I know was very intentional, because as you go along, you learn things. I mean, literally, like, as you said now, the switch between HCL1 versus HCL2, that's because of learnings. And when it gets to the point where you start feeling, well, we've got a good handle on the problem, we've had a lot of input, now we can go to production, because people do not like these big changes. And whenever you use a 0 point something version of anything, you need to understand, hey, listen, this is still pre-production. Things might change. That's the contract. That's why we're flagging it at 0 point something.
Exactly. And we're all used to semantic versioning, but HashiCorp has a little bit of a different approach to that. People have opinions on that there's no point in discussing that. What's important is we wanted to make sure Terraform feels stable to the point where we can say, you know what, for the next branch, for the next major version, we're not going to introduce anything that breaks stuff. And that's the commitment we have for the 1x branch. The 1x version. And that just should make it a better experience for everyone. For the people supporting it, for the people using it, for the people writing it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, but I mean, it's a good thing to have. Could imagine in terms of just like taking a step back from a trust and a brand perspective. If I started using Terraform and all of a sudden it starts tearing down my infrastructure and just breaking everything and it's a mess, I'm going to take a step back and say, whoa, this is not production ready. Let me ignore it until it is one day and maybe use something else and then get embedded in that ecosystem. Because I mean, even with these breaking changes, yes, it was sometimes a little bit difficult upgrading, but I remember never being in a place where if I looked at the plan output, I would feel not confident in that this is what it's actually going to do. I mean, fun thing here is I once actually ran Terraform and then it was waiting for something to complete and I needed to go. So I closed my laptop, it goes into spend mode. 3-4 hours later, I open it up again and that where it's waiting for the resource to complete, it just took off where it ended and it says, okay, cool, well, it's now 5 hours later, resources completed, and then ran the rest of the Terraform change. It was like absolutely mind-bogglingly amazing.
It's with certain resources that definitely works. And if you have resources where your network timeout works in your favor, it's beautiful. It's like that moment, like you grab your laptop, you close it, you open it up at home, and your shell is still there, right?
Yeah.
Infrastructure engineer magic.
It is for sure. It is for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think Kerim, thank you very much. I think I love this entire talk, and I can see that the chat has also enjoyed the
very good questions.
The very good questions from the chat. A lot of discussions here, and we're gonna make sure to get Kerim here once again to talk about more Terraform, something more specific in this case.
Maybe you had a chance. Code.
Maybe look at some code. Actually, yeah, there we go. So
how about we also share the code?
Yeah, exactly. So, make sure to give him a follow on Twitter. I believe we've posted one of his tweets somewhere before, but let me actually do it once again because we all like Twitter followers here as well. So I have it here. Boom. So make sure to give Kerim a follow on Twitter. He does a lot of great things with Terraform. So yeah, if you wanna bother him as well with your Terraform questions, I guess we just
or chocolate recipes, chocolate cake recipes,
or that as well. So I think this was really fun. I've learned a lot on some things, and also I like to thank everybody here for submitting their feedback on the survey. If you have not, do it. We actually, Kobus, I've created a command in bot. Bot has so if you do beard survey, type it like this in the chat, it should pop out like a survey link. So there you go.
Yes.
If you're looking for a beard survey, you can do it there.
But we just have to brag a little bit on Darko's behalf because he's way too modest. It's like this person next to me actually now has access to the AWS Twitch. So he's able to build these commands and things. He's been working a lot with the live streaming team.
Indeed. So that's a pretty fun thing. So yeah, please do let us know how we do, and we will take your feedback, your comments to heart. We will make sure to make the show the best you want. Basically, the goal of this show is not for us to stand here and talk about us and what we do. It's to also get folks like Kerim here to talk about what they do and technology they build. But we also want to teach you how to do things in the cloud. So. More screen share, more code, more hands-on incoming as well. So thank you for your feedback. And thank you really, and thank you, Kerim, for being here. It is really great to have you.
This was
any parting words? Anything you want to share with the audience before we end it up?
Yeah, codify your infrastructure. No matter which tool you use, just do it. Your future self will thank you when you want to go on vacation, and somebody can just check out a Git repository and go from there.
Yeah.
Yes. I agree with that. Absolutely. Pay your technical debt by writing some infrastructure code. It's definitely going to pay off in the future.
Yes.
And if you're not doing it right now, do it. Go write your first piece of infrastructure in Terraform, in CDK, in CloudFormation, in Pulumi, in whatever you like. Yeah. Books.
Yes, one question from Picky asking for book recommendations. I know there is, I think it's called the Terraform book.
There's Terraform Up and Running.
Yeah, that's the one I read.
That one is pretty good. Okay. There's a couple of them. Check out the O'Reilly library. There's new stuff coming out all the time. Yeah.
Oh,
it's worth it.
Share my screen again. This is this one, Terraform Up and Running, is the one you just mentioned. Yeah, you can go search for it. No, I didn't have an affiliate link. Amazon getting me some commission here. We're not allowed to do that. Sorry. And also, I can't tell you when the package is going to arrive. We also don't do that. Sorry.
Yeah, and also the one that Anton is mentioning, Terraform in Action. You can find it up there in the corner as well. So those are two great books right now that you can find on Terraform. This one from Yevgeny. This is the one I read initially a long time ago. It was.
We should actually get him as well as Anton on a stream at some point, because I've followed both of them with their infrastructure and how they do things, and I have got some places where I disagree strongly with them in terms of how they approach it. Yeah,
we'll reach out to them for sure. And with that, I think we need to wrap up the show.
Yes,
once again,
we've got
Kerim. Thank you very much for being part of this.
Thank you for having me.
Anytime. And thank you to the audience. Thank you very much for asking the questions. Thank you very much for the feedbacks. Thank you very much for being active in the chat. So we'll be seeing you here next week at the same place, at the same time. Next week, we're going to be talking still about code, but we're going to be actually talking about configuration management, and when it comes to application configuration management with AWS App Config. So we're going to be doing some demos, we're going to be doing some code, we're going to actually be doing some fun things. So make sure to join us next week, 1 p.m. Central European time, or whatever your local time equivalent is. And yeah, Kerim, once again, thank you very much. And everybody,
thank you.
Have a